Hey traders, it's Reed from Shift Alpha. And if you have been told constantly that you need a better strategy or you need a more objective strategy, if you keep thinking the system is your issue on why profitability keeps escaping you, or you keep giving back so much money to the market that you already made in your account, then I want you to hold on for a second because you may not be looking at this the right way. The problem may not be exactly what you're thinking about. This is for people who have a strategy, but you've been told constantly you need to make it objective because you've been giving back so much money to the market. So, first, let's get into the biological and the physiological roots of exactly how this happens, what this looks like when it comes to having a objective strategy and a strategy that you don't give profits back to the market with. So let me paint the moment for you. You take a trade. It's your setup. It's exactly what you want to look for. It meets all your criteria. It's an A plus, right? And you did exactly what a great trader would do. You took the trade, you clicked it, and then price starts to move against you. You lose. And in post-trade review, you start picking the entry apart. Was that really an A plus setup? The confirmation was a little weak. Maybe I should add another indicator. Maybe I should wait for a second candle to close. Maybe the time frame was a little too short. And eventually you start adding and adding and adding all of these different things. Because the system has the edge, but your interpretation is a moving target. And the reason why is because you interpret things based on how you feel or based on what you perceive for that day. So your interpretation can literally be changing from one session to the next session. Hence, it's almost like your strategy is changing from one session to the next. And the reason why this is detrimental is because over time, it really does degrade your edge. Because each little tweak that you make, it adds room for subjectivity. It adds room for the brain to negotiate during a high pressure environment where your brain shouldn't really be making any decisions. And the performance risk here is optimizing for how you feel instead of what the data shows. It creates a slow death to your edge. And that's when traders are constantly tweaking something that doesn't need to be tweaked to begin with. So back to this example. So you start adjusting, you add different conditions, you tighten your trading rules. Next week, different trade, same setup. But now with these extra filters you added, now something dangerous starts to happen that you felt before. You start to hesitate before you enter. The setup is there, but it doesn't feel clean enough. You watch it. Price starts to run without you. You missed it. It would have been a winner. Now you're frustrated again, not because the strategy failed, but because you changed the strategy based on the emotion and what it cost you in your last trade. This is the loop that we see so often. You lose a trade, you question the system, you tweak the rules, you miss the next opportunity, and then you tweak again. And every cycle feels like you're improving the strategy, and when in reality you're degrading your strategy. You're losing your edge. You're losing your profitability. You're becoming more and more unsure in the market. And as a result, you're making much less money than you would. You're not making profits because you keep tweaking it over and over and over. Frustration leads to impulsive revenge trades or paralyzing hesitation. Your emotions become higher. They become more apparent. And that's why this is so dangerous. And here's a statistical fact for you. Strategy volatility is often caused by a lack of trade sample size, but interpreted by the brain as a failure of system mechanics. What does that mean? That means that strategy volatility, it's because you lack sample size for your trading. So many people make decisions that we found based off 5 trades, based off 10 trades, based off a losing week, based off a losing month. Not understanding what does this strategy look like over the span of 100 trades, over 300 trades, over 500 trades. But they don't look at those long-term numbers. They just look on a trade by trade basis. And the key concept here, the A+ setup is a myth when viewed through the lens of a compromised nervous system. Meaning that A+ setup, it can be an A+ setup, it can be a terrible setup. But it's all distorted when you're in the market trading under live stress. And that's the big deal that we want you to understand from this video. And here's the belief break most funded traders, or just traders with substantial accounts that you make profits on and you lose profits, here's really what you need to hear. Your strategy isn't the subjective part. Your execution of it is. And that's very important because the strategy didn't change at all. It's just that your reading of it did. Your interpretation of it did. And you didn't choose to interpret or read it differently. Your state changed. And the reading followed. That's so important. And that's why we go to rules versus reality. So when we talk about rules versus reality, first you have your strategy. And your strategy, it may be objective on paper. This is the rules, the criteria, the entry and exit conditions. Those might be perfect. And those might be very objective on paper. But if you handed them to another trader, they take the same setups, which is great. Your rules are clear. It's objective. The system has an edge. But the moment you sit down to trade it live, your brain starts interpreting not the strategy, not the conditions around the strategy. It starts to understand. It starts to ask itself. It starts to trade something that's not really your strategy. It starts to trade how it feels in the moment. Is this really a clean setup? Does this feel right? The market seems choppy today. I just lost 2 in a row. Maybe I should just skip this trade. None of those decisions are in the rules. None of those decisions are objective. They're all interpretation. They're all subjective, and they're all being made by a brain that's under pressure. So you have the strategy. It may be objective, but the interpretation of it changes. And the pressure, a brain under pressure stops evaluating setups and starts scanning for threats or dopamine hits because your job is to keep you safe. And that's why having a strategy that's not objective is so dangerous in the market, because your state changes. And based on how you feel, it's going to perceive what you see. It's going to perceive what you think. It's going to change all of these things, right? So that's why, depending on what day it is, your trading can look dramatically different because you're trading from a different state. And here's what's actually happening, because at Shift to Alpha, we love to be able to give not just why it's dangerous, not just what's happening in your trading, but we also like to break down exactly what's happening on a chemical level in the brain, in your mind, so you can understand that this is bigger than just willpower. This is bigger than just positive thinking, but this is something actually happening on a chemical level inside of your brain. So here's what's actually happening. Your thinking system, which is the rational part that evaluates setups and follows criteria, it requires stability to perform well. When you're calm, rested, and focused, the strategy reads clearly. Setups appear, criteria met, you take the trade. And that rational system is called the prefrontal cortex. But you also have the survival system, which is the amygdala, which activates after a loss or near payout whenever it sees danger, whenever you're facing something that you emotionally have tied to pain, you have tied to loss, you have tied to something threatening that you don't want to have happen. Amygdala comes in, it takes control so that it can avoid whatever you have deemed to be painful. Whether it's a loss, whether it's a bad setup, it doesn't matter what it is. And this manufactured doubt. Your brain creates reasons not to act to protect you from perceived risk. This is so important because so many traders, when they're about to take a trade, when they are about to enter, when they're about to exit, when they're about to do whatever, your brain will actually start making reasons why you shouldn't do what you know you should do. And that's simply because your amygdala has taken control so that it can protect you from perceived risk. And that's why when you're trading, you're really trading two systems at once. You're balancing between this prefrontal cortex and this amygdala, and you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And all of a sudden you find yourself creating rules and telling yourself things that are not even part of your strategy, simply so that you can stay in the trade long enough, because you're perceiving threat on a subconscious level, not even understanding what you're doing internally. So here's a threat mode activation, which is the amygdala that we were talking about. When your state begins to shift, how you feel internally after a loss, during a streak, win streak, lose streak, near payout, under drawdown pressure, whatever it is, your survival system activates. In the survival system, the amygdala, it doesn't care. It doesn't see setups. It only sees threats. It only sees danger. It only sees things that you have emotionally deemed or labeled as painful. It scans for reasons not to act or reasons to act impulsively. So it starts reinterpreting the strategy in real time. The setup that was clearly valid 10 minutes ago, it now seems like it's not quite good enough yet. The entry that meets every condition on paper is suddenly feels off. And your brain manufactures doubt, not because the strategy is flawed, but because your nervous system is in threat mode and it's trying to protect you from risk. That's subjective execution. The strategy didn't change. Your reading of it, your interpretation of it did. And you didn't choose to read it differently. Your state changed. And reading it with a different state will produce a different strategy every single time. So when your state shifts, the strategy's reinterpretation of itself, it shifts in real time. Impulsive reactions, hesitation loops, state-driven readings. And here's the performance risk. Trust is a thinking system concept. Your survival system doesn't trust, it reacts. That's why so many people have these reactive trades. That's why so many traders make impulsive trades, revenge trades. Why? They're in a different state, but not even understanding it subconsciously. And this is why most common fixes don't work. Like, make your strategy more objective. You add more rules, you add more filters, you add more indicators, more confirmations. And for a week, it may feel like it's better. It may feel like it's executing more cleanly in the market, but then a losing streak hits and your brain reinterprets the new rules the same way. It reinterprets the old ones. More rules didn't solve the problem because the problem was never the rules. It was never you backtesting more. You backtest exhaustively already. The numbers confirm you have an edge in the market. You should be making a lot of profits in the long run. But in live execution, the same setups that worked in backtesting get filtered out by your emotional state in real time. The backtest didn't fail. Your live execution doesn't match the backtest. Simplify the strategy. That's something that people hear all the time, as simplicity works. And that's true to a certain degree. But simplicity doesn't prevent state-driven reinterpretations of the market. Trust the process. That phrase means absolutely nothing to a nervous system that is in threat mode, to a nervous system that is on a chemical level designed to avoid risk, which is full of risk in the market. Every one of these fixes targets the strategy. But the strategy isn't the variable that's changing. It's you. And the cost of misdiagnosing is enormous. Every time you tweak your strategy, after an emotional loss, you're eroding the very edge you spent months or years building. Over time, you end up with a strategy that's been modified so many times. It barely resembles the original strategy that you had. That strategy that was profitable, that strategy that was great out of the gate, because your emotional responses to the market kept rewriting the playbook. And as Shift to Alpha, we've seen personally that this cost can be around this $4,000 or even more for the average trader, not a Wall Street trader, not a trader with six figures in their trading account, but for the average trader, around $4,000+. And this can be either in money that you physically lost, this can be in potential profits you would have made that you didn't make. There's a real cost to this. So now let's go to phase 2, which is the tactical performance systems. So what's actually needed? That's the important part. We know the problem. We know what's going on. But what's actually needed? Not a more objective strategy, but an execution architecture. As Shift to Alpha, we call this an alpha trading plan that holds your interpretation steady when your state shifts. Something built around your existing edge or your existing strategy that prevents the survival system from rewriting the rules in real time. It uses the strategy you already have. It doesn't add filters or conditions or indicators. It builds a structure around how you execute the strategy so that the rules mean the same thing on a bad day just as they do on a good day. Because everybody has had trades where you take a trade and after you ask yourself, what was I thinking? Why did I get in? This wasn't even a confirmation. The market wasn't even in bearish regime or in a bullish market structure. Why did I take this trade? Because you were in a different state. So you interpreted the market differently and you did something that was totally opposite of what the market was showing you. That's why you need to build an architecture on how you execute the strategy that you have. So it doesn't matter what state you're in. It doesn't matter if you're having a good day or a bad day. It doesn't matter if you see the market as a piggy bank, as a personal ATM that day, or you see it as something that wants to take all your money that day. It doesn't matter if you have a proper architecture installed. Because the goal of trading is not to make money on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. The goal of trading is that over the next 100 trades, over the next 300 trades, that you're very profitable. And that is called consistency. And having an execution architecture is guaranteeing consistency with the strategy that you have. So the goal is not to fix the strategy, but to anchor the person that is actually executing it. And neural consistency. That's something important we haven't talked about yet. Training the brain to see the same edge regardless of recent outcome. So it doesn't matter if you lost the last trade or if you won the last trade, it all is going to look and perform the exact same. But here's one question that changes everything right now. After every trade you take or skip, ask yourself, if another trader with my exact rules was sitting here looking at this chart, would they have made the same decision I just made? If the answer is no, the strategy didn't fail. Your state reinterpreted it. The single question separates strategy problems from execution problems. And most funded traders never clearly made that distinction. And that's the shift. Your strategy probably isn't broken. Your execution of it under pressure is introducing subjectivity that the strategy was never designed to handle. So here's a very simple directive. Here's a very simple thing that you can start doing now that I'm sure will have incredible returns in your trading. And simply this: stop rewriting your strategy. Stop rewriting the playbook. Stop shifting. Stop tweaking. Stop editing. Stop adding. Stop. Because that's not the problem that you're incurring. Start looking at what's rewriting you. Because the edge isn't in the rules. The edge is in your ability to execute your strategy's rules the same way every time, regardless of what your nervous system is doing or feeling or reacting. And I want you to remember this. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're insanely profitable in the market and you're just trying to find an extra edge. You're just trying to find that extra piece of trading psychology to put you to a new level, or if you just begun trading and you don't even have a strategy yet. It doesn't matter where you are. I want you to truly believe that you are only one small shift to alpha. I appreciate you all. I will see you all in the next one. Any questions, comments, concerns, definitely type them out, read them below. I love to read them. I love to look at them. I hope you gained value from this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Stop rewriting those rules and build the architecture.